Today we're going to talk a little bit about XenApp and getting back to some of the basics in terms of setting it up and configuring it in environments. The topics that I'm going to touch on are some of the farm server role design considerations. I am going to cover the XenApp 6 and 6.5 as well as some of the 7.5 stuff that's up and coming. A few lessons learned from things that I've been through, and then we'll move into Citrix Native printing and the way to get that working without having to integrate with any third-party products. We're going to talk a little bit about native monitoring tools like your Edge site and touch on Director. And then there are some PowerShell reports that I have run, actually written and run, that I have found to be pretty useful, that some of the monitoring tools don't actually display as nicely as I'd like to see. So, a little bit about me. I know I've met some of you at Synergy. I've been in IT for the last 18 years. I've been in IT healthcare for the last 10, and before that I did have a consulting background. I did do that for almost 5 years. A few of my certifications. And I just finished my MBA, so I had to put that up there. I watched It's been 3 long years, but I graduate next Saturday, or 1 week from now, from tomorrow. As from a community perspective, in the last year I've become more involved in that as well. I have my own website where I do blog about Citrix and Exchange. I do some other writing for eNow and Petri, and then I also was a technical editor of a book called Conversational Exchange in the last 10 days. That was a little project I did this winter. So why are we here? It's become more and more a virtual world. We're seeing less and less hardware in our data centers, and I think that trends typically are following what the generations are showing us. You know, we're doing a lot more social in our organizations, and we also are doing a lot more virtualizing. You know, the kids these days are putting everything in the cloud, and virtualization is the way we're going. So jumping right in, this is talking a little bit about the farm server role design considerations. The reason I like talking about this is if you don't do the right planning up front and don't step back and really think twice about things, your project can end up like this. And you know, your customers don't want that, and we don't want that either. So first up is web interface or storefront. I always find this topic interesting because Citrix has been trying to get rid of web interface for, it feels like, forever. But it keeps coming back, and it just, we can't get rid of it. But hopefully this version of storefront we're on our way. So as we know, both of these products will present our users with their applications. You know, we're always going to secure them with SSL. DigiCert came up earlier, possibly using two-factor. I was at a session at Synergy this week, and I thought it was really interesting. It was about cost savings and how I think some customers try to cut costs, and they don't always put redundancy into their environments. So I would say you definitely wouldn't want to skip out here regardless of cost savings. You definitely want this to be a redundant role, or would want it to be a redundant role. The other interesting thing, I think Citrix is really taking a stance on making sure that new features are being developed within storefront, and they're doing a lot less in web interface. The new Zen mobile products are also requiring storefront, and they have actually put an end-of-life date on web interface, but we'll see if that sticks. From a XenApp 6 perspective, we've known to grow and love our XML brokers and ZDCs. Again, areas where you wouldn't want to cut cost, you definitely would want to use your redundancy. In the 7.x environments, we are now looking at delivery controllers to distribute our applications and now replacing them ZDC and XML brokers. Obviously using that to optimize our connections, manage our user access, and again, definitely need to be looking at redundancy. From an application perspective, we need to size the scale. We need to we need to be able to make sure we do maintenance, be able to pull our servers out and do patching, do reboot scripts, etc. So always size to scale and do up to 25% more capacity than you need. I also found it interesting. There was a lot of talk about this project accelerator at Synergy this year. It's something that I've used quite a bit in the past, and it is a pretty useful tool. Is this something you guys are finding to be handy when working with your customers? Yeah? Good. So I also wanted to share with you some of the designs that we have in the organization that I work in. So our XenApp 6 environment has the Citrix license server. We have 2 RDS license servers. We went with 2 XML brokers and 2 zone data collectors. We have our clustered databases, active passive pair of Netscalers. Those are in the DMZ. And in the next slide, you'll see we actually kind of implemented a redesign to actually put in 2 more Netscalers. I can talk about that in the next slide. We run over 80 application servers using streaming and siloing, and we support up to 2,200 users at any given time. The application silos? So we always do redundancy. So if I have an application that may need to run on 4 servers, we may install that on 4 servers. We had originally started doing the streaming, the Citrix streaming profiler, but the way, as soon as we learned that that was no longer going to be developed, we backed off of that. In the short term here, we're trying to get moving with AppV, but we do have to have silos in some cases. Plus, not every application seems to be able to be streamed. I had a conversation with someone this week who said it took them, actually I think that was Mike, right? It took you it took a year for an application to be streamed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so we don't have the man. Yeah.
Here's a monster app. Teresa, do you use provisioning services at all?
We actually, yes, and the next slide will actually showcase that. One quick other comment. So we wouldn't put the manpower into taking a year to do something. We just don't have that capacity. So when we cannot stream, we will silo and do install those apps on multiple servers. All right, so we are bringing online XenApp 7.5 right now. The top 2 are obviously shared across the 2 environments. I can jump down to PVS. For us, we felt PVS was the more robust option. I know it's kind of interesting to hear the different arguments at Synergy related to whether or not you would do one over the other. But it's a good fit for what we're trying to do with our environment. Mm-hmm.
Did you use physical or virtual PVS with one? Physical or virtual PVS?
We have hardware for PVS.
Physical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we started investigating doing it, we decided on hardware. We have 3 PVS servers. we went really high on memory so that we could do a lot more caching in memory. And I'm sure we could have done that on VMware, but trying to, instead of scaling out, we did want to kind of limit how many systems we had it on. So it really became about the memory. We're also using local disk for storage.
Yeah,
Say that
this is
again?
where we have to have applause.
All right, yay.
What's the hardware
Yay.
stack?
We use HP hardware.
And VMware is the hypervisor?
Right. And I think I didn't answer one question.
Production or plan?
Moving into production right now. Yeah.
How many previous goal?
So because we're implementing, we don't have everything totally ready to go. But what I anticipate is we'll have probably, I'm thinking 3 different persistent images, and then we will, on a limited basis, we're going to end up doing the non-persistent. So we're going to try and keep as few images as possible for many reasons. And then we're also looking at, part of our implementation is going to be publishing desktops, so the XenApp hosted as well. All right, so moving on. Sizing lessons learned. When we don't size our environments right, pretty frustrating. So, the main aspects I want to call out here is disconnected session timeouts and active idle timeouts. During one of our projects, our leadership wanted like almost no disconnected session timeout on things, and that wasn't a good fit for our design. So yeah, we had to kind of rein that back. But and then also the active idle timeouts. So I just wanted to call out where those were set. The other thing we ran into issues with was workspace control. We didn't really need workspace control, and it was actually keeping sessions open longer than we needed to, using up capacity that we didn't need. So we went ahead and disabled workspace control. And I just wanted to call out, this is where you would do it on web interface. And then when it comes to storefront, you need to go into the config files to disable that. So just a quick little summary of that, just making sure customers are aware that they need to be thinking about those things up front when sizing environments. A few other best practices. And actually, I went to a session where they talked about backing up the farm store, and I didn't realize that wasn't an obvious thing. Do you guys see that customers don't do backups of their stores? Really? Really? Okay. What?
Love the customers.
Okay.
Love them. They don't even document. Always forgive them.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
It's kind of odd. It's like,
Yeah, we back up every night. The test environment thing too, I think, is really important. We do not have the ability to have a full-out lab where that is set up, but we do make sure we always have extra test application servers so that we can break whatever we need to break before it goes into production. I love this CTX article for XenApp updates. If anybody who was at Bri Forum last year, I talked about some of the crazy situations we experienced. And I would 99% of the time the answer was in the CTX article. So really paying attention to that article has been very handy.
With the Citrix TAS service, now hot fix list as well. So
Okay.
If you do scout trace,
Yeah.
upload it to TAS, and it will say either the hot fix you have or what you should have against both Citrix and Microsoft. That's really, really useful.
Yeah, I would think so. I love,
Great.
yeah, I love TAS. Monitoring of the farm as well. this was actually more from Bri Forum, and talking to a lot of the attendees, a lot of people weren't monitoring their environments, they weren't using EdgeSight, and a lot of them didn't even know what that meant. So we're going to talk a little bit more about EdgeSight and Insight, and then I won't steal a lot of thunder on Director because I think Jarian's up next with that. So, but we'll talk about it briefly. And then this CTX article covers more best practices that I didn't call out here. So, printing. I always find this to be an interesting topic as well because so many different organizations do so many different things, and I think in times it's gotten better, but people still struggle with it like that. So I have some setup printing, some printing tips that I'm going to run through. Anywhere that there are policies, I'll show you where they're located in 6, 6.5, and 7.5. But my first tip is limiting the number of printer drivers. I know this is really difficult, and I think a lot of the time the advantage comes when you stand up new farms and then just take the time to start with little or nothing and only add what you need. Does anyone, has anyone ever deleted this driver from, okay. I did too. What broke?
Go back and use
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Had to get that re-pushed out pretty quickly. Oops. All right, so there are many Citrix policies that will help with that locking down of the drivers and making sure that printing works well. So we'll go through those next. So the first thing I recommend is that we're using the printer model only when universal printing is not available, so obviously relying heavily on the Citrix Universal Print Driver. Does anyone have any experiences that would stray from that? Right. Yeah.
Actually, what's that your business universal? So in other words, you will couple universal print driver from Citrix with corporate
Right.
universal driver.
Right. So I just wanted to call out where that setting is. This is in XenApp 6. This is where it is in 6.5. And then in Studio. I think there are probably mixed feelings on this topic, but we, and I think it's mostly the users that may object, but we actually had a lot of issues when we weren't just mapping the default printer back to the drivers, limiting the number of drivers, but also we had a lot of confusion over what people needed to be printing to. So with our XenApp 6 implementation, we took that away, and a few people complained, but actually most people were much happier because printing became more reliable. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So this is where that is in 6, and this is 6.5. We have about 700, and we have deployed, yeah, we probably have about 5,000 devices out there. So we use it for our bedside, and we use it at the nursing stations where it's closer to the patients, where you don't want the wrong hands getting on the equipment. It's the Windows embedded. No, that's great. they're domain joined, and there's a file that we manipulate to add the printer. Okay. And then that's where the setting is in Studio. Also restricting automatic installations of printer drivers, because when the Citrix UPD doesn't work, it may potentially install a driver on you. So making sure that that's restricted has been invaluable. So that's where that setting is. This one can cause, if you change the universal printer, universal driver priority order, this can cause some pretty interesting issues as well. If you have like a PCL 4 or 6 driver installed across your environment because that's a driver you need, it can actually pick that driver up first if it's not in the default order. So you always want to leave this alone, is what we've kind of learned. So just showing you where those are. A few other things that have been invaluable to our environment is setting these services to automatically restart as much as possible, because even though you may be limiting drivers, you still may inadvertently put a driver out there that could cause crashes on these services. So this will keep the users printing. And then this application setting on your published apps down at the bottom, if you can use this to start your application without printers, and that's really great for troubleshooting. And then just my last piece of advice on this is anywhere an organization can commit to a model or involve their Citrix team when they're bringing new models in, of course, the better the experience is going to be. I hear chuckles. I know it's difficult. It's hard to get that support.
I'm sure you have more problems with that. What have you found commonly used, or what have you troubleshooting in the environment to identify deviations and drivers that are out there on the system?
So the advantage we had was when we stood up the new environment, yes. So we brought it online as locked down as we could. We put only the drivers we thought we needed, and then we worked with the users to add what was truly required. So when an issue occurred, we were working one-on-one with them to figure out what we needed to do.
Do you have any session-based training at all?
No,
Do you anticipate your
not that I would think we would do. We are looking at doing BYOD, but it's very early in the discussions, so we're going to avoid it as long as we can. Yeah. 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 Yep. As to which version to go with, or? Yeah. So we have our electronic health record application installed on the 6 platform. We won't do anything to move that until we're ready to upgrade that application. Now, we're playing with Windows 2012 already, so this new environment we're standing up for, like the hosted shared and the VDI stuff, is 7.5. The only issue that we would have with actually moving like published applications to that goes back to our electronic health record application. There were some features removed, one of them being seamless flags out of the 7X products completely. And our vendor's been trying to work with Citrix to get those put back in. Was supposed to be there in 7.5, but I think there's rumors of 7.6, and it might end up there, or maybe that'll be a feature roll-up or something. But I don't know. I like playing with new toys, so I'm glad we're gonna get in there and learn more about it. So correct. So and we're going to be deploying that application or upgrading in fall. And unless that gets resolved in one of the upcoming feature releases, we will be deploying 6.5 for that upgrade.
Are you evaluating what the
Nope. We're only doing 2012.
So unless you remove them all,
All Xen Desktop and all hosted published desktops will be on 7.5. Our applications will stay on 6 until our electronic health record application is ready for upgrade. So Citrix monitoring. This is not the way to monitor systems. We can't use our, telescopes, right? So I wanted to talk a little bit about EdgeSight, especially since my experiences with customers have been that they don't seem to use it, and I think a lot of them own it. They just don't implement it. So I think that if you own it, this is the best tool to use to get that extra insight, to follow that ICA protocol, and really see what's happening. And so when you implement it, I remember one of the demos earlier was that the monitoring tool, he called out, or he pointed it out without saying what it was, the FB server pegging CPU. You just need your antivirus exclusions in place, and then that's not an issue. So those are the articles to follow when implementing EdgeSight and antivirus. Yes?
Did you consider since you change the portable image delivery, the life will be different once you implement your provision images when you deal with antivirus versus how you dealt with it before?
Yeah, so with PVS, we are on a totally new VMware farm, and we're doing all deep scan.
Do you have any persistency? Like if you have an image that's non-persistent, but let's say you carve out the persistent storage for those antivirus images. Do you plan to do anything like that?
No.
You
No.
said deep scan, are you talking about the
Trend deep scan.
Yeah, deep scan.
Yeah. So at this point, we're not going to be doing that. Mm-hmm. All right, so this is one of the EdgeSight reports that I like to use to detect session client startup duration issues. This is the first part of the report, and the second part has kind of the meat of the detail. So you have that user that's kind of not, or is having issues with latency. You can come in here, you can see which server they've been on, you can see which IP address they came from, which application they opened, and really start getting down to where the issue might be. I like this report too. I know there are other applications that can pull the XenApp clients, but I think the EdgeSight does a really good job of this in summarizing it. So I like that. And then the overall statistics, I find this to be a pretty nice executive summary of what's going on in the environment. So a little bit about Director. Like I said, I'm just going to touch lightly on this. We're going to hear about this shortly. But I guess the biggest call-outs would be that you can only use Director with the latest version of XenApp. and it's going to have more of a friendlier interface for your help desk users. So we're kind of looking forward to that. Oh, do they? Okay. Okay. I didn't know that. Thank you. Netscaler-wise, you definitely want to be using your HDX Insight for Netscaler, but you do need to have version 10 applied for that to work. Yes. Yes.
Every customer should run Planet Edition.
That's what they want to go platinum.
Alex will tell you
Yep.
that too.
That's what my Citrix sales rep was.
Yep.
Platinum's better.
Aaron, you didn't ask about net new purchases. A lot of them have them free. And if you
We are with the new environment. We brought on, oh, actually we didn't end up talking about this. So we brought 2 more Netscalers in because of how our DMZ is designed and where our Netscalers are today. We finally got approval to get a second pair of Netscalers closer to the internal network to deal with the double hop. And so on that pair of Netscalers, we have the HDX Insight configured. And then we have our other pairs, the 7500s, running the 9.3, and we were the gullible customer that put web interface on the Netscaler. So as soon as we can get our web interfaces off of there, we're going to go to 10, and then we'll have the HDX Insight there as well. Yeah. Today, yes. In the near future, it'll be off the Netscaler. So, right, we can't use it until we can get to 10, and we're not going to do that till the web interface is off of the pair of Netscalers we have today.
Where are you doing this work?
Oh, Children's Hospital of Wisconsin.
Where at Wisconsin?
Southeast, between Madison and Milwaukee. So we are going to play with Storefront. We have with the new design, we have 3 web interface to get off the Netscaler, and we have 3 Storefront. We are also going to be implementing, most likely be implementing Zen Mobile. We haven't quite made the purchase yet, so that those Storefront servers will be used there for production, and then we'll start playing with the web interface aspect on there as well.
Curious,
Time? Yeah. Time more than anything. Yeah. No. Been there, done that. All right. So the last part of my presentation, I just have a few PowerShell tips and tricks. I put my website back up here because you're going to see that these are nearly impossible to see. You know what I mean? And so that way, in case you wanted to go check them out, I have them all on my website. So some people find PowerShell frustrating, unless you're Carl or Dane. Anyways, PowerShell is pretty fun. Just a couple of tips that you guys probably know this, but PowerShell with the XenApp 6 and 6.5, you need to make sure you have your SDKs downloaded and installed separately, and then with the newer versions, so that's automatically installed for you. Thank goodness. So an issue that we see quite frequently is that Citrix sessions become hung to a point where, there's not an application tied to it, there's not even a user tied to it, but off like on your sessions tab, there's like this, yes. And you can't kill it in the console. You could reboot the server, possibly, if there's nobody else on it. So using this comes in quite handy. You can do it by user or session. Yes. Besides the reboot. Get the users off and reboot. That works really well too.
Sorry.
Yep.
Because we had that exact same thing. I mean, is everybody usually common?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's really frustrating.
It is really frustrating. Yeah.
Run that as a login.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so here's where it gets brutal. I know you can't see it, but we've also had a common issue. So with the weekly reboots, when you use the worker groups and the Citrix policy to do reboots, the first step it takes is disables the logons. And once in a great while, not too frequently, but I would say maybe once a month, we'll get a server that just stays in disabled logons and doesn't run. So, we have so much redundancy in place that it could have sat there for, 2 months before we would have seen it. So once we realized that this was kind of a trend, I put together this report. You can email it to yourself. You can do a scheduled task with it. And it just lets you know if there's anything hanging out there that needs to be addressed. Even worse. This is another one related to reboots. Keeping an eye on Citrix uptime. EdgeSite does have a report, but I don't find it to be that friendly. And so this PowerShell script that I wrote creates just a nice list of all the servers in your environment. Again, you can email it to yourself, run it on a scheduled task at whatever interval you choose, and then you can see if servers are rebooting. One of the other issues that we've seen too is when we add servers to the environment and we add them to the reboot worker group, they don't always get the registry key that controls that. And so by watching this, we can figure out if that's actually happening. Yes.
What's that?
All right, so are there any more questions? Yeah. We are scaled. You're talking about the 30 plus application servers. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. Yes, and that is something we will probably look at doing. One of the interesting things about this product is we had everybody wanted the solution, but nobody really had the use cases put together for us. So we're really trying to pull together the right use cases for the environment. While we have an idea of where we're going to take it now, I expect that that stuff is going to grow. There will be more images, and the way we use it will change. Okay, that's all I have. So thank you.